Hi there! Apparently, Mika is rekindling their love for the burn element, skipping ahead by 5 banners to bring us Sakura early. She's a Vanguard and Chiyo's new favorite partner, offering frequent instances of burn damage with significantly improved AoE coverage. Without spoiling too much, her kit shifts the team away from its original single target support action heavy playstyle. With the burn roster now exceeding what a single team can reasonably field, we are forced to confront an uncomfortable question. Do we revamp our existing lineup or start building a second one? Given the neglect of most other elements, this discussion may feel premature, but in the long run, it's unavoidable. That said, let's not get ahead of ourselves. As usual, we'll begin by breaking down Sakura's kit and her contribution to the element, so you can decide if you want to add her to your roster. Without further ado, let's get into it. Like Lewis, Sakura passively gains thermal conduction at the start of battle. Remember that this is the buff that essentially functions like a counter, which repeatedly grants Ember whenever 35 stacks of Searing Flame are reached. Ember provides a team-wide 30% burn damage boost for 2 turns and a stacking 5% crit damage bonus permanently. Lewis generates Searing Flame stacks via Volley Fire, whereas Sakura does so via a debuff she applies to enemies. Importantly, the two of them jointly stack towards the same Ember activation, which is to say you're lowering the round number at which Ember is obtained for the first time. That grants the burn damage buff earlier and helps stack the crit damage bonus faster. That said, they are both rather slow at generating Searing Flame before their V6 upgrades, so it's not a massive change in practice. Sakura's debuff is called Sakura Mark. She applies 2 stacks of it to 3 random enemies at the start of turn, plus 1 more stack at the start of battle when she equips her first fixed key. The debuff can stack up to 3 times. When the affected target takes burn damage, 1 stack of Sakura Mark is consumed, dealing 60% of Sakura's attack as AoE burn damage, or 90% if at least V1. Note that the boss is also affected by her debuff Bad Luck, which increases its damage taken from Sakura Mark by 10%. Normally, this is only applied via Sakura's S2, but her 4th fixed key does it at the start of battle so that the initial triggers of the mark benefit from the damage bonus. That said, as Vector uses her ultimate, you can see the first stack getting consumed for the additional AoE burn damage. This also activates the fixed damage bonus from Vector's buff. You can think of this as an alternative to the support action gimmick the burn team used to revolve around, just without the attack animation. Of course, since this is not a support action, there's no synergy with Vector's passive, but each trigger is an instance of burn damage that increases Chiyo's Scorch Mark counter. With Lewis, Sakura, and the upcoming Lorelei, you'll find that the new burn team moves away from support action spam and single target focus to more AoE capabilities. After the 3rd burn damage dealing attack, here from QJ's support action, all 3 stacks of Sakura Mark are consumed, which provided 6 Scorch Mark stacks for Chiyo and 6 Searing Flame stacks for Sakura. Next, Sakura uses her S1, which lets her select a position within a 2-tile range of an ally or an enemy with Sakura Mark, to which she will then teleport. As she lands at her new position, she deals 60% of her attack as AoE burn damage to all enemies within 2 tiles. After the skill concludes, she gains extra command. Her S1 costs 3 Confectance points, so it cannot be used every round. When Sakura is paired with the V6 Chiyo, you generally want to use the S1 on odd-numbered rounds, as this will maximize the Scorch Mark stacks on the turns that Chiyo's ultimate is fired off twice. Note that the S1 has no cooldown. Sakura's V2 lowers the skill's Confectance cost by 1, allowing her to use the S1 twice in a row on some of the turns for even more Chiyo damage. We'll go over that in more detail once we discuss her rotations. With the extra command, Sakura now uses her ultimate. This is a directional AoE attack in a 3x10 tile range, dealing 90% of her attack as burn damage. It will also apply 3 stacks of Sakura Mark to all targets. To deliver the damage in the most literal sense, her ultimate calls forth an express delivery truck. You can see that the damage is dealt before the animation concludes, and the 3 stacks of Sakura Mark were also applied to the boss at skill activation. Once the truck leaves the scene of the traffic accident, another instance of damage can be observed. This is because the ultimate immediately triggers the effect of the previously applied 3 Sakura Marks for a total of 180% attack as burn damage. Within 90% of the ultimate, this yields a total damage multiplier of 270%. Note that these are not 3 individual instances of damage, so Chiyo gets 2 Scorch Mark triggers out of this, not 4. This quote-unquote extra Sakura Mark trigger also does not grant any Searing Flame stacks. As the ability concludes, Sakura gains Good Luck for 2 turns. With this buff, she will apply 1 stack of Sakura Mark before making an active attack. She also gains a 20% damage boost from her passive while having Good Luck. Since the buff is gained at the end of her turn, it lasts for the next 2 rounds. Her ultimate is used every 3 rounds due to its cooldown, so you're essentially looking at a small downtime that coincides with the use of her ultimate. One thing to note when mixing the new and old generation burn dolls is the potential lack of single target attacks. Remember that a total of 6 are needed to fully utilize QJ. Here, parry takes care of QJ's needs, providing at least 4 triggers at V0 or 6 at V1. The new burn dolls don't synergize well with our standard banner powerhouse, which is one of the reasons why Lewis can be used as a substitute for QJ when you simply don't have enough single target attacks anymore to make her work. If you're a collector with all the burn dolls, you'll be able to build 2 burn teams eventually, one centered around single target damage and one around AoE. Next, Sakura's S2 is a single target attack dealing 130% of her attack as burn damage. The skill applies 2 stacks of Sakura Mark and, before attacking, bad luck for 3 turns. Remember that bad luck is a debuff that increases the damage from Sakura Mark by 10%. Also keep in mind that Sakura now carries a good luck buff granted by her ultimate at the end of the previous turn, which makes her apply Sakura Mark before actively attacking. As the skill hits the target, we can see 1 stack of Sakura Mark appear on the boss due to good luck. Immediately after, the stack is consumed for the bonus damage because it gets applied and triggered by the same attack. After these support actions conclude, we can see that the boss ends up with 2 stacks of Sakura Mark due to the S2's effect. With the 2 stacks of Sakura Mark applied passively at the start of turn and the 3 stacks just now, plus the active attack, we're looking at 6 instances of burn damage, or 7 when Sakura also uses her S1 with its extra command. This makes her the most effective Scorch Mark stacker for Chiwa. To make sense of Sakura's rotation, we need to address her Confectance economy. As you can see here, on round 2, Sakura has a full index. She passively restores 2 points at the start of her turn. Her skills consume 3 and 2 points respectively, while her ultimate restores 2 points. This skill priority gives you a clear guideline of how to approach her gameplay. You simply use her ultimate when available, which is every 3 rounds, and you use the S2 when the ultimate is on cooldown. The S1 is the skill with the lowest damage and should only be used when it can be changed into one of the other abilities. So, for a 7-turn battle, you'd look at this simplified rotation, which for now ignores the S1. If we add in the change of her Confectance index, you can see that the rounds with the S2 are neutral, whereas rounds with the ultimate grant a surplus of 4 Confectance points. Since Sakura's S1 costs 3 points, you cannot simply spam it every round, as that exceeds her Confectance restoration. Thus, the only critical part of Sakura's gameplay is when to include her S1. When running Sakura alongside a V6 Chiwa, you generally want to align the additional instance of burn damage with the double trigger of the Scorch Mark explosions, meaning on odd numbered rounds. I'm showing a rotation for a 7-turn battle like Gunsmoke before her V2 upgrade, which lowers the Confectance cost of her S1 by a point. For clarity, I'm also denoting in subscript the state of the Confectance index at the start and end of the turn. While this may look a little complicated, you simply need to follow the general principles as outlined before. Use the ultimate when available, use the S2 when not, and include the S1 on odd numbered rounds. When you're not running a V6 Chiwa, there's no strategic reason to align the S1 to specific rounds, so simply use it alongside the ultimate or when you have enough points to also use her S2. Now, if you have her at V2 or higher, you get to use her S1 2 more times over the course of 7 turns. Without a V6 Chiwa, you can again just simplify your life and use the S1 whenever it doesn't come in conflict with the skill priority. However, with Chiwa, and when trying to optimize the damage for Gunsmoke, you'd still want to prioritize odd numbered rounds for the additional instance of burn damage. The modified rotation doesn't look much different from before, just with an additional use of the S1 on some of the odd numbered rounds. This is possible since the S1 has no cooldown and isn't restricted from the extra command ability selection. Assuming you can't finish the fight early, you're using the S1 on round 3 and 7 for a triple attack. This way, Sakura gets in up to 8 Scorch Mark triggers for Chiwa, and even more at V6. That brings us to our investment breakpoints. Sakura's own damage is fine for a Vanguard, but she's not here to take over the role of a main DPS. At V0, you can expect similar damage as from a V6 Shakri, but with the ability to stack Ember and a more notable focus on AoE. Aside from being a decent map clearer, her main purpose in boss battles is to generate more Scorch Mark stacks for Chiwa. Normally, I'd highlight the most relevant upgrades, but I don't think Sakura has any real breakpoints. Her V1 and V3 increase her damage output by a reasonable amount, and her V2, as mentioned, lowers the Confectance cost of her S1 for a slightly different rotation. At V4 and V6 she applies more Sakura Marks, providing more instances of burn damage to stack Chiwa's Scorch Mark higher. More Sakura Marks also means more Searing Flame stacks to activate Ember more frequently. Still, for free-to-play and low spenders, Sakura is completely fine at V0, and only those with the V6 Chiwa may consider steeper investments to make the team's carry burn even brighter. As for Sakura's signature weapon, Mika managed to make it relevant by giving it the same trait as Svarog, which is to say it ignores up to 20% of the target's defense when exploiting weaknesses. The weapon effect grants 15% burn damage, plus up to 14% out of turn damage. The relative improvement in damage over Svarog is about 10%. However, if you're considering to invest a little extra, Sakura's V1 will improve her total damage output more significantly, so I'd only consider the weapon afterwards. Moving on to Sakura's fixed keys. We've seen two of her keys in action which activate at the start of battle. Her first key applies one additional stack of Sakura Mark to 3 random enemies. This allows you to immediately stack the mark to its limit, since her passive applies only 2 stacks. Similarly, her fourth key applies bad luck for 3 turns to the highest HP target on the field. This increases the damage taken from Sakura Mark by 10% or 30% if at least V4. The debuff is normally applied by her as 2, which Sakura only uses on the second round, so having this key activates the damage bonus earlier. It should be used for all bossing content. Then, her second key is also a staple in her kit, allowing her to apply Overburn alongside Sakura Mark, though excluding her ultimate from the effect. For bossing content, or more specifically Gunsmoke, you may sometimes want her third key, which enables Sakura to remove 1 buff when applying bad luck. As just noted, this occurs when using her as 2, which she does whenever the ultimate is on cooldown, so on turn 2, 3, 5 and 6. The Burn team has several great buff dispellers though, so in practice you may only rarely need this. Her sixth key grants Sakura 4% bonus attack, up to 20%, whenever a target with Sakura Mark dies. This is great on mobbing stages or when bosses have summons. The key should be swapped in for such content. Lastly, her fifth key is a defensive option, granting a one-time single target damage reduction of 60% after ending her turn. This may be relevant for high difficulty content when Sakura roams the map alone with her high mobility. In summary, Sakura provides another decent option for the continuously expanding burn roster. As a Vanguard, she boasts great mobility and reasonable damage. Like Lewis, she cannot outperform Shakri in single target output at V0, but she does offer other benefits. Notably, she is much more AoE oriented than the previous burn dolls. Alongside her ability to teleport around the map, she is a good Kluke substitute for any mobbing content. However, the shift toward AoE abilities makes her less ideal for pairing with QJ, who needs 6 single target attacks per round to maximize her damage contribution. While our standard banner favorite receives no love from her, she is a great match for the team's hyper carry. With her Sakura Mark and up to 2 active attacks, she often triggers 6 to 7 instances of burn damage for a V6 Chiwa and single target fights and more against multiple opponents. This makes her the most effective Scorch Mark stacker as of now. This ability becomes even greater at higher investment, with up to 11 instances of burn damage in single target combat. Lastly, after Lewis, she's the next doll to have the thermal conduction buff in her kit, allowing her to stack Ember for the team. This provides bonus burn and crit damage, though again, the stacking speed is very slow at V0. Overall, there's not too much more to say about her. If you desire more variety and flexibility for your burn lineup, you may want to pick Sakura up. She shifts the team away from their focus on single target output and support actions, allowing the lineup to function better in more types of content. She's perfectly capable at V0 and doesn't require further investment. That said, if you are satisfied with your already built lineup around QJ, Vector and Chakri and don't mind their specialization, you don't stand to gain much from adding Sakura into the mix. Her lack of single target attacks may even hinder the team, especially without an invested Chiwa. On the contrary, if you are a V6 Chiwa enjoyer and want to improve her output ever so slightly, you should consider Sakura. For spenders who are serious about their Chiwa's damage, you may even invest further, though if you had to choose between Sakura and Lewis, I'd suggest going with the latter, as Lewis stands to gain much more personal damage from her upgrades. That brings us to the end of this video. My apologies for being a little late with this one, I had a hard time pulling myself away from Enfield. After getting over my initial dislike of the factory system, I ended up far more absorbed than I expected. Fortunately, we're still on time ahead of patch day. Hopefully, you now have a clearer understanding of Sakura's role within the Burn team and her potential account value. Let me know whether you plan to pick her up and what lineup you have in mind. And if you're feeling adventurous, feel free to leave a prediction for the next banner. I'm sure the Mika team would appreciate a good laugh. In any case, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.